And so, we move on to the second part of the story, Evans tries an O-level. Now, before we move on, let's recollect the very last scene that we had left part 1 with. You remember when he was going, the invigilator, they were checking through his bag. They were checking everything. They went through the Holy Writ. They went through all his, things, the envelope and everything was there. And there was one thing they were left curious with. What was that? Let's move on and find out. Do you mind telling me why you've brought this, sir? He held up a smallish, semi-inflated rubber ring such as a young child with a waist of about 12 inches might have struggled into. Now, do you see this semi-inflated rubber ring? This one? So he says, you thinking of going for a swim, sir? Now, it was a very funny thing. Why was he carrying that inflated thing in his bag? So Mr. McClary says, McClary's hitherto amiable demeanor was slightly ruffled by this tasteless little pleasantry. Now what happened? So far, he was very cool, he was pleasant, his behavior was normal so far, McClary's. Now when they told him this line, that are you planning to go for a swim? Why are you carrying this inflated tube-like thing? And he did not like it, obviously, so he answered, Jackson somewhat sourly. He answered in a very, he was upset, in that upset tone. If you know, I suffer from hemorrhoids. And when I'm sitting down for any length or time, now hemorrhoids is what? It is the swollen veins near the anus. So at the sitting position, he had some swollen veins. And that point of time, you can't sit directly, on the chair or anything. So you need this seat kind of thing. So this is why he had this issue, and so he had carried it for himself because he was supposed to sit there for 2 hours. So obviously he needed it. Very sorry, sir. I didn't mean to err. And he was embarrassed. He didn't know, he wasn't aware. The embarrassment was still reddening Jackson's cheeks when he found the paper knife at the bottom of the case. Now, this is what we were looking at, the paper knife. Remember, he had to open the sealed envelope, so obviously, he needed that paper knife. I think I'd better keep this though, if you don't mind that, sir. He says, look, I don't think this should be there with you. I better take it with me. It was 9:18 a.m. Now, while all these things were going on, the checking and everything, it became 9:18 before the governor heard their voices again. And it was clear that the examination was going to be more than a little late in getting underway. So obviously now, because of this checking and the security, it was taking them a little way more time. So it was expected that the exam will not get over as per the schedule. But yes, it will be a little later than that. McClary, you've got a watch? Evans, yes sir. McClary, I'll be telling you when to start. Now, this English that you are seeing is their tone, right? So, as per that, I'll be telling you when to start, and start when you're finished. 5 minutes left, right? So, that's the thing McClary is telling him. He's saying, look, I'm going to tell you when to start. And again, when you have 5 minutes left, you need to stop. I will tell you only that time. I will speak only twice when to start. And 5 minutes before the exam needs to end, that time I will tell you. There's plenty more of this writing paper should you need it. He says, so this writing paper, there are many of it. If you need more, you can ask for it. Now write the name. Now he's telling him how to go about. He says, write the name of the paper 0 to 1-1 in the top left hand corner. In the top right hand corner, write your index number 313, and in the box just below that, write your center number 271. Alright? So he says, do you understand? Do you get it? Now it was 9:20 after all this. McClary, I'm now going to, and he's just saying something, and Evan says, is he not going to stay here, is he? Now who was actually there? Stephens was there. Now, Jackson had instructed him that you be there in the cell with the two of them. So, he says, be there. But what does Evan say? He says, is this gentleman going to be here? Is he going to be here and, while I'm writing the exam? McClary says, I don't know about that. He's saying, I am an invigilator. I don't know what these people have decided. Stephens says, now Stephens was there. Mr. Jackson's given me strict instructions too. Now before he could finish, he says, I have got instructions from Mr. Jackson to be here. Evans, how am I supposed to concentrate on my exam with someone breathing down my neck? Christ, sorry sir, I didn't mean. He says, how am I going to write my exam if I find someone, you know, those, the pair of eyes literally hawking at me, literally staring at me all the time? How will I be able to concentrate when someone is looking at me like this continuously? So it's not possible for me to write. He says, sorry sir, I didn't mean to. I mean, the governor reached for the phone. Now you remember the governor is listening to everything. That microphone was there on top of the door. So he was listening to the entire conversation. So he immediately picks up the phone. Jackson, good. Get Stephens out of that cell, will you? I think we are perhaps overdoing things. Now the governor feels that, maybe we are overdoing it. We are doing more than, expected. We are going way beyond. So it will be very disturbing for him. So it's better, he tells Jackson, you tell Stephens to come out of the cell. As you wish, sir. He says, fine, as you wish. The governor heard the exchanges in the cell, heard the door clang once more because obviously Stephens must have stepped out, and heard McClary announce that the examination had begun at last. Now Stephens was called out, the door clanged, it shut once again, and finally the exam begun. It was 9:25 a.m. Now, wow, there's a lot of suspense going on. Actually, it's really fun going through this story step by step, line by line. Really enjoying it. I hope it's the same at your end. So yes, it was 9:25 a.m. and there was a great calm. Now everything was silent because Evans had started writing his exam. At 9:40 a.m., the examination board rang through and the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern languages asked to speak to the governor. Now, 9:25 the exam started. After 15 minutes, again the bell rang. Now, who was it? It was the secretary from the examinations board, right? And he, with special responsibility for modern languages, he asked to speak to the governor. The examination had already started, no doubt. A quarter of an hour ago. Quarter of an hour is 15 minutes. So yes, just like we calculated, it was 15 minutes ago. Yes, well, there was a correction slip which some fool had forgotten to place in the examination package. He says in that question paper, a correction is required, and somebody who, some fool has not put that in the question paper envelope. Very brief, it's a very small, change. Could the governor please, and the secretary is telling, could he actually do that for us? Yes, of course. I'll put you straight through to Mr. Jackson in D wing. He says, okay, fine. I'll connect you directly to Mr. Jackson. Hold the line a minute. He says, just a minute. I'll connect you through. Was this the sort of thing the governor had feared? Now, you remember the governor was constantly in that worrying mode. He was in the tension mode. He was on that alert mode. Everything that was happening, he was looking at it with suspicious eyes. He was suspecting trouble. He wanted that exam to go off peacefully, but somewhere in his mind, every time there was an alarm ringing, there was tension in his head that hope it goes peacefully. So everything that was happening, he was getting suspicious. Now, was the phone call a fake? Now, was it really the secretary who spoke, or was it a fake call? Some signal? Now, he's getting all the doubts in mind. Is it some signal? Is it some kind of signal? Now, that fellow will come in with a slip and, he'll do. What is happening? He was just trying to analyze. Some secret message, but he could check on that immediately. He's saying, irrespective, I will check on it. He dialed the number of the examinations board, but heard only the staccato bleeps of a line engaged. Now he called back, the governor himself called back the examination board, and what he heard was only a series of high-pitched and separated sounds. You know, when you call someone and the phone is engaged, how you get those beeps? That's it. So the staccato bleeps of a line engaged. Engaged means here the line was busy. He was talking to someone else. But then the line was engaged, wasn't it? Yes, not very intelligent that. And he's wondering, he's trying to connect the dots. 2 minutes later, he heard some whispered communications in the cell and then McClary's broad Scots voice. Within 2 minutes, he heard some communication happening. He was listening through the microphone. So he heard some talking happening in the cell where Evans was giving his exam. And then he heard McClary's broad Scottish voice. He then heard his voice. And what was he saying? Will you please stop writing a wee while? He's now telling Evans, okay, just stop writing for a short period, Mr. Evans, and listen carefully. He says, now you listen to me carefully. Candidates offering German who are giving German 0211 should note the following correction. He says, now this is the correction you need to listen to. On page 3, line 15, the fourth word should read goldenen, not goldine. And the whole phrase will therefore read zum goldenen Lewin, not zum goldine Lewin. And by the way, this is the golden lion. We've learnt German. So yeah, it means the golden lion. I will repeat that. So now he's giving him the correction. So basically there is a correction in the adjective golden. Do you see the spelling? Well, if you are well versed with French as well. So the thing is, these adjectives have to agree with the gender of the noun. So if your lion is masculine, your adjective will be in the masculine form. If your lion is in the feminine form, the adjective also goes in the feminine form. Now this applies to French as well. So I'm just sharing it with you, right? So now he explained to him that this was the correction. The governor listened and smiled. Why did he smile? I mean, he was already, in that suspicious thing. Why suddenly the smile? Because he had taken German in the 6th form himself. He was somewhere familiar with a little German. And he remembered all about the agreements of adjectives. Like I already told you, agreement of adjective as in now the thing is, I'll tell you, the nouns in French also as well as in German, they are, actually gender based. They are either masculine or they are feminine. Like here they're neutral. So we just use or we use any, it's not the case in English. Whereas in French, the nouns are gender based. And because the nouns are gender based, the adjectives also agree to that. The spelling changes according to masculine and feminine. So yeah, so he was aware of the agreements of the adjectives, and so did McClary. By the sound of things, for the minister's pronunciation was most impressive. But what about Evans? He probably didn't know what an adjective was. Now you remember when Evans was, when his sir had come to wish him luck one day prior, he says, look, I know you're not going to pass. I mean, it's because obviously he knows his student how much of an effort has he put, for preparing for that exam. So he was aware. He says, anyways, I know you're not going to pass. And remember Evans' line, he says, who knows, I might surprise everyone. So, and you remember also, I left the word surprise. What kind of surprise? So very soon we are just going to be there. So he probably didn't even know what an adjective was. He says, he was totally unaware. He had not really prepared himself. The phone rang again. The magistrate's court. They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers. Remand case. Now the governor gets a call again. The chief of the prison. He gets a call again from the magistrate's court. Now, we all know a civil official who conducts court and administers the law, the magistrate. They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers. It was a remand case. Remand case as in here in custody, the pending trial. Now, within 2 minutes, the governor was wondering, whether that could be a hoax, that could be some kind of a trick that is being played. He told himself not to be so silly. He said, okay, stop it. Enough. I mean, these calls keep coming. His imagination was beginning to run riot. To run riot as in to run wild. He felt his imagination is, I don't know, it's just going here and there, totally in a wild thing. Evans, I mean, he said anything is possible with this man. So everything that happened, during the period of the exam, everything that was happening, and he was like, okay, now there is something fishy in it. So that's what he kept feeling every time. For the first quarter of an hour, Stephens had dutifully peered through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so, and after that every 2 minutes. Now, remember, Stephens was also called out, right? He was called out because Evans said, I don't want him looking at me, staring at me. How can I concentrate on the exam? So he was outside. Now he was outside. So what he did, dutifully, as in with proper duty, with proper care, he was peeping through, he peered through the peephole for after every 1 minute or so, he kept opening that peephole to check everything is okay. So first, he did that every minute. Then he started doing it after 2 minutes. At 10:45 a.m., everything was still all right as he looked through the peephole once more. Now till 10:45, this scene kept going on. He kept looking through the peephole, everything was okay. So this process went on till 10:45 and everything was fine. It took 4 or 5 seconds, no more. I mean, obviously, just open, look, close. So 4 or 5 seconds. What was the point? It was always more or less the same. Every time the same old stuff. He's writing, he's sitting. That's all that is happening. Evans, his pen between his lips, he was thinking, so the pen between his lips, sat staring straight in front of him towards the door. Now, you remember he was sitting on this side and the door was there, and in middle was McClary. So every time he kept staring at the door, seeking, it seemed, some sorely needed inspiration from somewhere. He kept looking, he said maybe some kind of inspiration comes, something comes to him where it can make him easy, to write that exam. And opposite him, McClary, seated slightly askew from the table. Askew from the table is he was not in a straight position. He was a little on a tilt, on on an angle. His face in semi-profile, his hair, as Stephens had noticed earlier, amateurishly clipped pretty closely to the scalp, in the sense very unskillfully. The way it was cut, it was not cut from a professional sort of thing. So it was clipped pretty closely to the scalp. It was very shortly cut. His eyes behind the pebble lenses, peering short-sightedly at the church times. Now here they are describing the whole scene where Evans was actually now looking at the door trying to get some inspiration, and McClary was sitting at an angle and his hair was cut very unprofessionally, very unskillfully. His eyes behind the pebble lenses, see the way they describe it, peering short-sightedly at the church times. Remember, he had carried that church times with him. So yes, he was reading that. His right index finger hooked between the narrow clerical collar. His left index finger was there at the collar, and the fingers of the left hand, the nails, meticulously manicured, slowly stroking the short black beard. His left hand was on the beard and his right he was doing with the collar. So here what he did was, he says his left hand, then he realizes the nails, they were meticulously with great attention, with proper attention, very sharply and very nicely his nails were manicured. Manicured as in they were taken care of. They were nice and tidy, his nails. So this is the scene that has been described where during the exam at around 10:45. Now, what happens at 10:50? At 10:50 a.m., the receiver crackled to life and the governor realized he'd almost forgotten Evans for a few minutes. Now, once again, the phone bell rings. Rapid succession of short, sharp noises. So, the phone bell rang. It so beautifully, the receiver crackled to life. That means the phone bell rang. So beautifully put. And the governor realized, he just came out of a trance. He was like, he had literally forgotten that he had to concentrate on Evans. Please, sir, Evans says something. Please, sir, again he says a little loud. First he said it softly in a very whispering tone, then he says louder. Would you mind if I put a blanket round me shoulders, sir? It's a bit parky in air, isn't it? Now, it's building up. The scene, the suspense is building up step by step. So, would you mind if I put a blanket? I'm feeling very cold. Parky here means chilly, cold. He's feeling very cold over there. So, he's saying, if you don't mind, can I please wrap this blanket round myself? There's one on my bunk there, sir. He says, it's just lying on my bunk. If you could just pass it and I could use the blanket on my shoulders. Be quick about it. McClary says, okay, fine, take it. Cover yourself. 10:51 a.m. Stephens was more than a little surprised to see a grey regulation blanket draped round Evans' shoulders, and he frowned slightly and looked at the examinee more closely. Now you remember he was peeping through the peephole every time? Yes? So Stephens was a little shocked. He opened once and he realized, oh, what is this? So he saw him in that a grey regulation as it is provided according to the rules. Now you get your set of blankets in the prison. You don't carry your own personal. So everyone has one common, type of blanket. So he was that. He wore that. To see a grey regulation blanket as in the one which everyone uses in the prison, draped round Evans' shoulders. It was, wrapped loosely around him. And he frowned slightly and looked at the examiner. He looked at him and, he started concentrating on Evans. Who's the examinee here? The one who's giving the exam. So Evans. He started looking at him more closely. But Evans, the pen still between his teeth, was staring just as vacantly as before. Vacantly as in there was no focus. He was not really... we know he wasn't even prepared for the exam, right? So he was just sitting with a pen in his mouth and he was just looking, and there was no focus. You could see that intelligent thing is not there, that intelligent approach wasn't there. Blankly beneath a blanket. He was looking very blankly and he was, of course, wrapped in that blanket now. Should Stephens report the slight irregularity? Now, he was thinking, should I report this to the governor? Anything at all fishy, hadn't Jackson said? Now, Stephens was supposed to report to Jackson. Jackson was his reporting authority. So, he says, Jackson had told me anything fishy, anything you feel is, somewhat suspicious, please let me know. So, he was thinking, should I tell him that he's put this blanket around himself? He looked through the peephole once again, and even as he did so, Evans pulled the dirty blanket more closely to himself. Now, when he was peeping, Stephens was peeping through, that time Evans was actually making the blanket much more tighter around himself. Was he planning a sudden Batman leap to suffocate McClary in the blanket? Now, they are all in the crime world. All right, they are there where all the criminals keep coming. So obviously they have all sorts of ideas. So he said now he's, wrapping the blanket very tightly around himself. What if he just takes a leap, across to McClary and he suffocates him in the blanket? Possible. Anything is possible. Don't be daft. He says, don't be stupid. Don't be mad. Your head is going where? There was never any sun on this side of prison. No heating either during the summer months, and it could get quite chilly in some of the cells. He says, don't be stupid. Here, this part of this prison, first of all, there is no sun. There's no sunshine. So there's no warmth of the sun. And then again, during the summer, there's no heating either. There's no heater around. So obviously, during summer months, it could get quite chilly, quite cold in some of the cells. Stephens decided to revert to his earlier every minute observation. He decided to return to that previous state the way he was. He decided to do that to his earlier every minute observation. Now, 11:20. You see, every minute that is passing by, there is tension rising. They're suspecting so many things to happen, but they again at the same time they have taken care of every risk, every possible chance which could make Evans escape the cell. They have taken care of everything. So now going further, at 11:20 a.m. the receiver once more crackled across the silence of the governor's office. Again there was a phone bell at 11:20, and McClary informed Evans that only 5 minutes remained. The examination was almost over now, but something still gnawed away quietly in the governor's mind. Something that actually was still, he was in that continuous worry thing. He was still hoping that, okay, these 5 minutes should go peacefully. Nothing wrong should happen, but that thing was continuously going on in his mind. 11:22 a.m. Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. The governor wanted to speak with him. Hurry, man. He says, quick, hurry. The governor wants to speak to you. Stephens picked up the phone apprehensively. Apprehensively, he was scared. He says, oh my God, now what is the problem? And listened to the rapidly spoken orders. He quickly heard there were some orders which were coming from there very fast. He was listening attentively. Stephens himself was to accompany McClary to the main prison gates. Now, this was one of the orders that was given. He told Stephens, you only take McClary back to the main gates and escort him. Understood? Stephens personally was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McClary had left the cell. Understood? Now, this were the set of instructions that came from the phone, the call that he received. So, he knew that it was the governor telling him that you take McClary to the main gate, you guide him there. But before that, you make it very, very sure that you have locked the door of Evans very well. Do you understand? Says, understood. At 11:25 a.m., the governor heard the final exchanges. Stop writing, please. Put your sheets in order and see they are correctly numbered. Now here the governor heard the final talks where the exam has ended and McClary is instructing Evans to stop writing and put his papers in the correct order. Silence, scraping of chairs and tables. They were moving, they got up. Thank you very much, sir, Evans told him. Right, was it? He says, not too bad. So he asked him, so was it good? Did you fare well? He says, not too bad. Good. Mr. Stephens, now he calls out very loudly, Mr. Stephens, the governor heard the door clang for the last time. The examination was over. So now McClary calls out to Mr. Stephens, right? And then what did the governor hear? He heard the door shut, the door clang for the last time. Now these doors are very heavy, So when they close, you know, when the door of the prison, they open and they shut, they have that particular noise. So for the last time, he heard that, and finally the examination was over. But what about the surprise? Here it comes. How did he get on, do you think, asked Stephens as he walked beside McClary to the main gates. Now, if you remember, Stephens had got a call from the governor telling him that you are going to take McClary to the main gate. So while they were going towards the main gate, Stephens asked McClary, how did he get on, do you think? How do you think was his exam while they were walking together? Oh, I cannot think he's distinguished himself, I'm afraid. He says, he makes himself worthy of respect or achieves something. I don't think that is the case, I'm afraid means I don't think so. His Scots accent seemed broader than ever and his long black overcoat reaching almost to his knees. Fostered, it showed, it created the illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. Now, what had happened? Now, please, all ears towards me. His Scots accent, his Scottish. You know, Mr. McClary, he was a Scottish. So, his accent was it seemed broader than ever. I mean, it was sounding a little different. And you remember he had come dressed in that long black overcoat, right? Reaching almost to his knees. They wear those long coats because there it's pretty cold and that's the dress code. Fostered, it showed, it created, it sort of developed that illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. He suddenly looked thinner than when he came before. Stephens felt pleased that the governor had asked him and not Jackson to see McClary off the premises. Now, Mr. Stephens felt privileged. He felt honored. Oh, the governor told me. He did not tell Jackson to do it. He told me, and I'm feeling really nice about the fact that I am taking him out. And all in the morning had gone pretty well. And all in all, everything right from the beginning till the end, everything had gone fine so far. But something stopped him from making his way directly to the canteen for a belated cup of coffee. Now, he dropped McClary, he went, he left. Now, when he was coming back, but something stopped him from making his way directly to the canteen. Now, he was there invigilating, he was there guarding rather as security outside. Now, he was supposed to go to the canteen to catch up on his coffee, belated as in he was supposed to have it earlier, but because he was busy with this, he could not have it. So as per the thing, he was supposed to go to the canteen for his coffee, but something stopped him. He said, okay, he wanted to do something before he caught up on his coffee. He wanted to take just one last look at Evans. He said, now that he has left, okay, just let me see this man is also fine inside, and then I'll go and catch up on my coffee. It was like a program he'd seen on TV. It was just like some episode, some serial, about a woman who could never really convince herself that she'd locked the front door when she'd gone to bed. Often, she'd got up 12, 15, sometimes 20 times to check the bolts. Now, this was just like that serial, where the woman is never able to convince, as in, she's never persuading herself. She's like not really sure that, has she actually locked the door? And for the reason, every time before going to bed, she goes to check on it maybe n number of times, like 12, 15, 20, just to make sure that the bolt, the door, the lock has been locked, it has been shut. He re-entered D wing. He re-entered that wing where Evans was there in the prison, right? So he re-entered, he made his way along to Evans' cell and opened the peephole once more. Here comes the surprise, students. Keep listening. And he opened the peephole once more. Oh no, Christ, no! Now, when he finally saw through the peephole, what did he see? Why did he scream? Now, here he says Christ, just like we say, oh my God. For them, they say Christ. There, sprawled back in Evans' chair, was a man. For a semi-second, Stephens thought it must be Evans. For, just one thought, he thought it was Evans. A grey regulation blanket slipping from his shoulders, the front of his closely cropped, irregularly tufted hair awash with fierce red blood which had dripped already through the small black beard and was even now spreading horribly over the white clerical collar and down into the black clerical front. Wow, the surprise. Finally, so what happened? When actually Stephens opened the peephole, what did he see? He saw a man sprawled back, as in there, sprawled back means he was sat with his limbs spread out clumsily. Now, obviously, he was murdered sort of thing. So, he just sat there like a dead body. First, Stephens thought it was Evans. Why? Because, Evans had put that blanket initially because he was feeling cold. So even this person who was on that chair, he was also wrapped in that same blanket. A grey regulation blanket slipping from his shoulders, in front of his closely cropped as in it was very, short hair. We said not really close to the scalp, very, very short hair. Irregularly tufted hair, it was not even combed very well. Awash with fierce red blood. Now here there was all blood around there, which had dripped already through the small black beard. Now it had come down to the black beard and was now even spreading horribly over the white clerical collar. It came from the collar and it was going down into the black clerical front. Now that was the scene Stephens came across. Stephens shouted wildly for Jackson, and the words appeared to penetrate the curtain of blood that veiled McClary's ears. Who was it? Yes, it was McClary on that chair, the invigilator. He screamed for Jackson, and those words, they literally penetrated. It was so loud that literally through the curtain of blood that veiled, it was covering, there was a lot of blood flowing out. For the minister's hand felt feebly for a handkerchief from his pocket and held it to his bleeding head, the blood seeping slowly through the white linen. He gave a long, low moan and tried to speak. So as soon as Stephens saw this scene, as soon as he saw through the people and he saw this whole scene, he screamed loudly for Jackson. And he screamed so loudly that even McClary, who was in that semi-conscious state of mind, heard that voice and he started moving. Now here, there was a lot of blood coming, from the head. It was going towards the collar, the coat downstairs. He was bleeding profusely, very badly. Immediately when he heard that voice, McClary, the churchman, the invigilator, known by so many names, the parson, all these are McClary, right? So, for the minister's hand felt feebly for a handkerchief from his pocket. The minister who they are talking of, McClary. Now, he was in such a bad shape, he tried to reach to his pocket to remove a handkerchief so that he could stop the blood, at least the way it was flowing out. Feebly means with a very weak. He was obviously not in that state, he was in a very bad shape. So, he just very slowly tried to remove it. And he held it to his bleeding head, the blood seeping slowly through the white linen. Now handkerchief, it's very porous. It's a material. So when you put it on something, so it starts staining out. The blood flows through it. It's porous, right? So his whole handkerchief, that white linen thing, also became full of blood. He gave a long, low moan and tried to speak. He was in that thing. He just wanted to speak. He was in pain. He was dying in pain. But still, he tried to speak a few words. And what did he say? But his voice trailed away. It trailed away as in here it went, it did not really understand it the way it went on. And by the time Jackson had arrived and dispatched Stephens to ring the police and the ambulance, the handkerchief was a sticky, squelchy wad of cloth. There it is. So when McClary tried to speak, obviously he was not that very audible because he was totally in a bad shape. And so by the time Jackson arrived, the moment he arrived, he quickly told Stephens, go immediately, call the police and call the ambulance. Immediately run for it. Until all this could happen, the handkerchief which Mr. McClary had put, it was totally sticky, squelchy, as in something that makes a soft sucking sound when pressure is applied. It was totally, damp with blood. It was totally covered with blood. That wad of cloth, the handkerchief. McClary slowly raised himself. He was on a chair. Remember, he was just lying like that. So he immediately raised himself his face twisted tightly with pain. Now, you remember it was bleeding here. So, obviously, he had a lot of pain. Didn't worry about the ambulance, man. I'm right. I'm right. He says, don't worry. Don't call the ambulance. I'm all right. Don't bother about me. Get the police. I know where he... Now, he was not worried about himself. He says, look, don't bother calling the ambulance. First, you call the police because I know where who he? Evans. But then he closed his eyes and another drip of blood splashed like a huge red raindrop on the wooden floor. Again he stopped and again that blood came flowing out and it fell on the wooden floor. His hand felt along the table. He started feeling because he knew where he was. So he started touching the table. He found the German question paper and grasped it. He immediately took it. He, took it fast. He gripped it tightly in his blood-stained hand. His hand, because he was, wiping it. So obviously there was blood on his hand also. So with those hands full of blood, he tried taking the German question paper. Get the governor. I know where Evans. He says, call the governor immediately because I know where Evans. And again, almost immediately, sirens were sounding. Prison officers barked orders. Barked means they were shouting really loudly. They literally were shouting. Puzzled prisoners pushed their way along the corridors. Doors were banged and bolted and the phones were ringing everywhere. Now, come on, a prisoner has escaped once again. He had done it so many times before and the governor was so concerned. You remember he had taken so much care to make sure that nothing happens, but that smart, cunning chap actually made it happen. So yes, when all this happened, he says, you please call for the governor because I know where he has gone. And immediately, everywhere there were sirens ringing. There was the sound of the sirens. Prison officers were shouting. They were giving each other's command, do this, go there, don't do this. Lots of things happening. The doors were banged and they were bolted. They were shut. The phones kept ringing. So you can imagine that scene where the prisoner has escaped and they have all just got to know. And within a minute, McClary with Jackson and Stephens supporting him on either side, his face now streaked and caked with drying blood, was greeted in the prison yard by the governor, perplexed and grim. Now, what they did was, one side Stephen, the other side Jackson, they both, gave him support so that he could stand, McClary could stand. And they took him slowly and gradually towards the governor. They took him to the governor. But by then, his face, it was streaked and caked, means it was covered. It was totally covered now. His blood had dried. So that dry blood was on his face. And he was greeted in the prison by the governor. What was the condition of the governor? He was totally shocked. He was perplexed. He was totally shocked. And obviously, he was totally serious. He was extremely gloomy. Why? Because we are aware that he was already having that doubt every point of time as Evans was giving that exam. So everything he was, looking with a lot of suspicion, but then it finally happened. We must get you to hospital immediately. I just don't. When the governor saw him, he says, oh my God, first you need to rush to the hospital. You've called the police? He says, have you called the police? McClary is asking them. Yes, they are on their way. But I'm right. Look here. He's saying, you look fast. I'm trying to tell you something. Awkwardly, he opened the German question paper. Awkwardly, in a way that means with great difficulty because he was not in that, right shape. So yes, with great difficulty, he opened the question paper and thrust it before the governor's face. He actually took it there. He says, look, it's there. Do you see what I mean? He's showing him something. He's saying, see, this is what I'm trying to tell you. Do you see what I mean? The governor looked down and realized what McClary was trying to tell him. The governor saw the paper and he understood what actually he is trying to tell him. A photocopied sheet, there was a double sheet. A photocopied sheet had been carefully and cleverly superimposed over the last originally blank page of the question paper. See, they find ways out. What had they done? They had kept a Xerox sheet. There was a photocopied sheet which had been superimposed. It had been kept over the sheet in such a manner, it was placed, overlaid over something else. So the way it was put on that last page of the question paper, which originally was blank. Actually it was blank, but this thing had been put. So, of the question paper, they had done that. Somebody had very carefully and cleverly done that. You see what they've done, Governor? You see his voice trailed off again. Again, his voice, slowly, gradually, it, just went on diminishing. As the governor, dredging the layers of long neglected learning, willed himself to translate the German text before him. Now, we are aware, governor had learned a little bit of German in his 6th form. So, yeah, he was a little bit aware of it. Again, the McClurgy's voice went low. It went so low that they could not hear. So, what the governor did, he was dredging the layers of long neglected learning. As in, he brought up something that is long forgotten, something that he had really ignored. The learning, obviously the German, he's talking about German here. So he willed himself, he tried to make, himself to do it. He said, okay, let me try and translate this language. Let me try and translate the text which is there before me. Now, this was the text written in German. Yeah? Let's look at the translation. What he has translated out of it. You must follow the plan already somethinged. Now, here instructions have come for Evans where he wants to escape. So this is what was there on that superimposed sheet on the last page of the question paper. You must follow the plan already somethinged. The vital point, the main point, the most important point in time is 3 minutes before the end of the examination, but something. Now, something he did not understand. He was not able to translate because, it was a long, ages back he had done it. So he didn't really remember. He could not remember all the words. He could not translate it fully. Don't hit him too hard. Remember, he's a minister. And don't overdo the Scots accent when. Now here, these instructions had come to Evans. He said, you are supposed to do all this within the last 3 minutes of your examination. Your examination is going to get over. Within the last 3 minutes, you are going to do this. But remember not to hit that man very hard. Why? Because he's a minister. Minister as in he was the church person. He was a parson. He says don't hit him very hard. Even they know what is a sin. But yeah, anyways he had sinned by hitting him. So yeah, don't overdo the Scots accent when. Now he's trying to translate. He says the Scottish accent, don't try to overdo it. Just stay in your limits. Now while he was saying this, while the governor was trying to translate that, a fast approaching siren wailed to its crescendo. The great doors of the prison yard were pushed back and a white police car squealed to a jerky halt beside them. Typically the scene of a movie. Now here everything has happened, he has escaped and there's a loud siren. It wailed as in it was a high-pitched sound and it went to the loudest possible sound. That siren was so loud. The great doors of the prison yard were opened up. Obviously that car had to enter and a white police car squealed. It had a, how they raced through. So it was that high-pitched tone to a jerky halt. Screech, when they give the brake, how that sound comes. That screech, it came and it stopped beside them. So here you see the police. Detective Superintendent Carter swung himself out of the passenger seat and saluted the governor. What the hell's happening, sir? Now, who has come? The detective superintendent Carter. He swung himself, as in he just opened the door. He opened the door and he just stepped out of the passenger seat. He was not on the driver's seat. He was sitting next to them. And he saluted the governor and asked him what is happening. And turning to McClary, now when he approached the governor, when he came to the governor, that time McClary was already there, right? So suddenly he saw McClary. He says, Christ, who's hit him? He says, oh my God, he's bleeding so badly. Who has hit him so hard? But McClary cut across whatever explanation the governor might have given. He just let it be. He says, okay, fine, whatever explanation the governor gave. Elsfield Way, officer. I know where Evans. Now, he is saying, whatever you speak, speak. He did not have that much strength. He had become weak. He had started bleeding so badly. So, he had only courage to speak a few words and stop, speak a few words and stop. So, lastly, he told them, Elsfield Way, officer. I know where Evans. Every time he's trying to tell them, he was breathing heavily and he leaned for support against the side of the car. Now, he tried to take support. He was losing his balance. Where the imprint of his hand was left in tarnished crimson. Now, he tried to take the support of the car. He was just there. And the imprint went, like he kept his hand on the car for support. And what happened? There was a tarnish, there was a lost luster due to the exposure to air. His crimson, his hand got the imprint. His hand impression was there on the car. In bewilderment, Carter looked to the governor for guidance. What? He was actually shocked. He was confused. He says, what do I do? What now? What next? Take him with you if you think he'll be all right. He's the only one who seems to know what's happening. The governor says, look, you take him with you if you think he's going to be all right, because the thing is, he was with Evans till the last minute. So he knows exactly what has happened. Only he can help us. There's no other go. Carter opened the back door and he helped McClary inside. He made him sit on the back seat. And within a few seconds, the car leaped away in a spurt of gravel. In a spurt of gravel, as in with a cloud of dust. Again, the same typical filmy scene. The car runs and there's, the dust, the clouds of dust out there when the car leaves. Elsfield Way, McClary had said. Now he's trying to take him to that place where Evans has actually headed for. As per the plan mentioned in that paper, now he's guiding him to move on. And there it was, staring up at the governor from the last few lines of the German text. From Elsfield Way, drive to the Headington roundabout where, yes, of course, now he is getting those words. Gradually, he was trying to translate. The governor had forgotten most of his German. So what he could translate, he was saying. The examinations board was in Elsfield Way. He says, of course. Now, why is he heading Elsfield Way? Because the examination board was there. And someone from the board must have been involved in the escape plan from the very beginning. Now, the governor is connecting all the dots. He's saying, why Elsfield Way? Then he realized that the examination board was there. So, somebody from there itself, from the board itself, has been a part of this plan. That's the reason, that's how this whole thing happened. The question paper itself, the correction slip. The governor turned to Jackson and Stephens. Now, the superintendent went. He took McClary with him. Now, who was left at the scene over there? Jackson, Stephens, and the governor. While the governor was trying to connect the dots, while he was trying to think what actually happened, the whole thing he rewinded, how the question paper came, then there was a correction slip that came. So he was trying to connect it, and then he looks at these two people, the prison officers. I don't need to tell you what's happened, do I? He says, I think you guys know what is happening. Should I tell you? His voice sounded almost calm in its scathing contempt. Scathing as in severe contempt. He was like, okay, so you guys know what has happened? And which one of you two morons, maniacs, mad people, was it who took Evans for a nice little walk to the main gates and waved him bye-bye. Now, he says, do you know that one of you fools, you have walked Evans and you did not walk McCleary to the gate. Evans was walking with you and you did not even realize that he is walking with you. You literally guided him, you escorted him till the gate and you told him a goodbye. Who was it? It was me, sir, stammered Stephens. Now, he was, involuntarily, because he knew that blunder had happened by him. So he was stammering. Now, remember, Stephens was feeling very proud initially at that point of time that, oh, the governor did not tell Jackson, but he told me to take him out, and now he's getting it. He's getting it back. Just like you told me, sir, I could have sworn. He says, look, the way you guided me on the phone, I'm telling you, I'm really sure I have done just the same. What? Just like I told you? You say, what the hell? He's saying, I told you? When did I do this? I didn't. When you rang, sir, and you told me to, he says, you only rang me up and you told me that you take him out. When was that? The governor's voice was a whiplash now. It was a whiplash. It was resembling a blow of the whip. His head was going bonkers. He's like, what is happening? He literally felt like he's got a slap. He's got a whip. You know, sir, about 20 past 11, just before, he says, yeah, you called me at that point of time and you only told me to do it. You blithering idiot man, blithering as in a complete, utter, absolute. You literally stupid man. It wasn't me who rang you. Don't you realize? He said, don't you know it wasn't me? But what was the use? He says, what's the point? What had to happen has happened. He had used the telephone at that time, but only to try unsuccessfully once more to get through to the examinations board. Now, what he had done at that point of time, you remember? He had called back. When he got the call, he said, okay, let me try calling back and make sure that it is from the examination board regarding the correction slip. So when he had tried to call back, remember that phone was going engaged? Yes, what was happening? That person was talking to Stephens at that point of time. It was not the governor who had given the instructions. That man who was the culprit, that man who was involved in the plan, it was him. The call was from there. That's the reason it was going engaged. He shook his head in growing despair and turned on to the senior prison officer. He was literally in a very, shocking stage. As for you, Jackson, how long have you been pretending you've got a brain, eh? He says, oh, so you think, now Stephens was dealt with. He gave Stephens good, the governor. Now he's looking at Jackson and he's telling him, oh, you think you are clever? You think you have been pretending you've got a brain? Well, I'll tell you something, Jackson. Your skull's empty. Absolutely empty. He says, your skull, there is no brain inside. You don't even deserve to be here. Your brain, you have no brain rather. It was Jackson who had spent 2 hours in Evans' cell the previous evening. He says 2 hours it was you who had spent time with him. And it was Jackson who had confidently reported that there was nothing hidden away there. Nothing at all. Jackson had done checking of the entire room and it was he who very confidently had told the governor, don't worry, there is absolutely nothing, no kind of instrument over there. And yet, Evans had somehow managed to conceal not only a false beard, conceal as in to hide. He had not only been able to hide a false beard, a pair of spectacles, a dog collar, and all the rest of his clerical paraphernalia, but also some sort of weapon with which he'd given McCleary such a terrible blow across the head. Now, Jackson was there with him the previous day for 2 hours checking each and every corner of his room. He had not found anything at all. But Evans, somehow, he was able to hide everything what the clergy, what the churchman or what the invigilator was going to wear. He had managed to hide all of that with him. A false beard, a pair of spectacles, a dog collar, exactly what this guy had worn, and all the rest of his clerical paraphernalia. Paraphernalia is a word which says that all the miscellaneous things, all the other things required for a particular activity. So this is something that he was required to do. So he had managed to keep all those small things also ready, the miscellaneous. And along with that, also some sort of a weapon. He had kept something with which he hit Mr. McClary's head. So even that one weapon was there with him, which Jackson had not spotted, had not found. He's like, oh, how could he do that? A prison van backed alongside, but the governor made no immediate move. Now, a prison van backed alongside, it parked somewhere near there, but the governor was as he was lost in his thoughts. He looked down again at the last line of the German. You know that question, that paper which had come in the German language. Again, he was still lost. He was trying to get the last line. To the Headington roundabout, where you go straight over and make your way to Neugreben. He says now he started getting, he was gradually trying to get through. So the last line what he read was, to the Headington roundabout. You have to go over there, where you have to go straight. Now this was the map, this was the route given to Evans where he had to run to, where he had to escape to. So he says you go straight over and you make your way to Neugreben. Now there is one such place over there. He says you just go there. Neugreben, where on earth? He says, where is this? New something, new grave, never heard of it. He's trying to recall. He's saying, I've never heard of this place. There was a war grave somewhere near Reading, but no, it was probably a code word. Or then it hit him, Newbury. He said this was a code for Newbury. This is not exactly, there is no such place that exists as Neugreben. So he was trying to recollect, he tried to put in through many dots. Finally, he came to the conclusion that it is Newbury. God, yes, Newbury was a pretty big sort of place. But now he got it. He says, aha, that's Newbury. This is where he's supposed to go. But what? Let's watch it in the next part of the story.